Great. Good morning. Welcome to the Addison Township Public Library First Friday Book Club. And I want to introduce our discussion group. My name's Jama.
I'm Rana.
Rita. Dorothy.
Mary Ellen.
Denise.
Welcome, everyone. We're so glad that you're here today to join us in this discussion of Dorothea Benton Frank's book, Sullivan's Island. I was really excited to read this book. It's a little different from what we've read in the past. I love literary fiction, but this is a little bit more on the popular side, and I want to thank Rana, our group member, for suggesting this book because I would not have read it otherwise. But this book really got me very excited about what people can do with literature and history and family memoir. It was a huge insight for me and excitement because I was reading it on an airplane as I was traveling to California. And the whole hurricane was occurring at that time, and I was reading about a hurricane on Sullivan's Island. But before we get into the meat of this discussion, I just wanted to thank everyone who has been attending the really great events we've had at this library. And I know we had a really great event last night. It was the Make and Take Pumpkin Craft. And Mary Ellen, what did you think of that?
It was wonderful. It was fun, and everybody had a good time, and I have a beautiful pumpkin sitting on the table at home.
I saw a picture of it. They were really quite frilly and quite artistic.
They were, and I needed help.
That's awesome.
I wasn't creative on my own, and Len was facilitating and was very encouraging and made everyone feel like they had something pretty to take home. It was very nice.
Well, that's great. It had a huge attendance, and we will be posting some of the pictures from that event on our Facebook page, so please check us out on Facebook. And we're going to be having some really great events coming up in October. I just wanted to let people know about on October 10th, we will be having the 40th Anniversary Planning Committee and Social, where we will discuss how we want to handle the upcoming celebrations of our 40th anniversary here at the library. On October 23rd, 1 week before Halloween, we will be hosting the Scientific Paranormal Investigators, and they will be sharing their experience on debunking ghosts in houses. They come for free, and they will visit your house for free and help you debunk your spirits. And on October 26th, we're very excited to be at the Friends Flavor Fest silent auction and wine tasting at Buell Hall at the Addison Oaks Park. So get tickets while they last. They're on sale until October 13th. And so we're excited to have all these things happening at the library right now. But back to our book, I brought a picture of Sullivan's Island. I know this is probably a little blurry, but Sullivan's Island really exists off the coast of South Carolina. There's a lot of factual information in this book, and I thought we should go around the room and discuss what we all thought of it in general terms, and then we could go on to our questions. And Denise, would you like to tell us what you thought of Sullivan's Island?
I liked the book, but I stopped reading it. I was done 2 weeks ago, and I really don't remember. I kind of forgot what the book was really about.
That's okay. There were a lot of characters.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was. I really enjoyed the book. Mm-hmm. I had a good time.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Thank
well,
you.
Good. Mary Ellen, what did you think?
I enjoyed the book and the relationship between the sisters. So there was a lot of sad family things, but the sisters supported each other all the time. And I have a wonderful sister, so I think that's why it connected. And the other thing I really like about it is so many books are real negative about the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And in this book, the Catholic Church was very much part of the family's life. And they didn't try and make the priest or the nuns be the bad guys. Mm-hmm. They were the good guys. They did some things to help, but it was nice to not have that negativity of church bashing, which shows up in a lot of novels. So I enjoyed the book.
Oh, excellent. Dorothy, what did you think?
I like the book also. I do enjoy books of that locale and culture. I have read some of her books before, and she's a very good author. What else can I say? I liked it.
Well, thank you. Rita, what did you
Oh, I enjoyed it. I like what Pat Conroy says on the back. Her books are funny, sexy, and usually damp with seawater. And I've read Pat Conroy and a lot of the Southern writers, and she's one of the top Southern writers, and it's just fun. It talks about Charleston, which is right across the bay or whatever, the water from Sullivan's Island and that whole area. And I've been down there, and so I understand. I've been on tours, and it's just a lovely Southern book of their lifestyle and of how different people fit into the culture, and especially Livy, who is the main character, and how she keeps the whole family together because she's just such a strong character. So it's a fun Southern read.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Rana, would you like to say something?
She's just my favorite author, and I really enjoy her books, and I enjoy being in them, and I have never been there to Sullivan's Island, so I really want to go. Makes me want to pack up and go. So
You'll love it. It's
yeah.
beautiful.
My brother actually turns out his ancestry is there.
Ah.
And I'm a little envious
Uh-huh.
because mine is not there, but I
Yeah.
just want to go visit.
It was so captivating. I just was swallowed up in this novel. I was swallowed up in the love that I felt that she had toward her siblings. And even though she had hate and love relationships with her parents, I felt that love that she had, and the love that she had with the housekeeper that was employed by the family, and the language, the Southern language, the dialect, and the Gullah language, which we'll probably talk a little bit more. But I felt like I learned a lot. I know the South is in the news a lot lately, but I felt like I learned about the love that people have for their place. That the house is a kind of a holy place. That the land is a holy thing. That the beach and the relationship to the weather was a holy thing for this author. And I felt like her strength was just so there, and I just felt so happy to be there in that place that she painted for you as I was doing my own travels. So I thought that was just I couldn't have been more happy, and I told everybody that I met how much I loved her. And I'd never even read her books before, and so I was slapping myself, like going, how could I not have read this?
You just thought it was chick lit, huh?
I thought it was chick lit.
Chick-lit.
Exactly. I had dismissed her, and I just was so upset with myself. So without further ado, I thought we would go with our first question, and what is the Low Country, and how important is it to the story of Sullivan's Island? Speaking of Low Country, I just wanted to say, we talked about other Southern writers, and I know that you mentioned other Southern writers, and Rivers Siddons, think you say her
Yeah,
name?
she's
read
good.
her, yeah.
She's good.
She's good. So this is
read 'em
another
all.
writer I've never heard of, I've heard of her, but I've never read. It's called The Low Country. So this is a very interesting book. And then I thought I'd bring Pat Conroy along with us.
Never
And
read
this
that.
is
Tides,
Prince
oh.
of Tides, which is
It's a dark novel.
it's a dark novel. His other novels aren't quite so dark, but they are about
movie.
family.
And
And it's a
movie.
wonderful movie.
What about Nicholas Sparks?
Oh,
I mean, that's
Nicholas-
North Carolina.
Oh, okay. Nicholas Sparks. I have not read a whole lot of Nicholas Sparks, but we should
I
probably
really like
think
him.
about it.
It's light reading,
Uh-huh.
but he definitely understands this women.
Uh-huh.
And he's a man.
Yeah.
That's right.
And he's got 5 kids, and he paints North Carolina.
That's what I
really
remember
nice.
about
Well, that's
this
good
lady.
to know. We should
Want to go there too?
Absolutely. Yes. So back to the question of the Low Country, and how important is it to the story of Sullivan's Island? What did you all think?
It
of
is
that?
the story.
Yes, it really is, right? It's like a main character.
Right. It's
I think it must, if you live by the ocean, it must be alive to you. For those of us who live in the Midwest, going to the ocean is a vacation thing. But if it's there, and it must feel like another part of the family.
But the Southern Ocean is so different. If you take the ocean from the northwest of Washington State, you can't compare it to the ocean in the Low Country. I mean, the ocean, they're at sea level down there, and they've got grass. And it goes on forever, and it's just, but I know what you're saying. But it has a different smell, in the South, everything about it is totally different.
Which, I mean, I think it almost becomes part of the family.
Oh, absolutely.
The ocean, the smell and the temperatures and
Oh, absolutely.
the feel of it. When you just go
yeah.
visit it.
You're right. It's comforting.
Friend
It's
versus
comforting.
the Northwest is probably scary.
No.
Well, I mean, but it's not a lullaby. The ocean in the Northwest. It's kind of
Oh, it's-
very active and agitated, generally speaking. Not every day, but
Yes, you're right. And it's
this
cold.
is more
It's cold.
lulling.
Cold.
Interesting.
Whereas in the
freezing.
South, you can walk right in the water.
But there's
It's
a lot of
fabulous.
history there too. History, I think, is the,
Sure.
In the Northwest.
yeah.
yeah.
Well, no, in the South,
South.
yeah, probably more so than up here.
I think you're right, Dorothy, when you mentioned the history about the Low Country, and I think that we could refer to how many slaves were brought through Sullivan's Island in the 1700s.
I was just in Charleston for a very short time a few years ago, and the history just is there. I mean, it's all over. You're completely surrounded by history. I'd love to go back.
War was just an inconvenience.
And the hurricanes,
More
yeah.
of the northern aggression.
Yeah, no.
As they refer to it, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I believe that they refer to Sullivan's Island as the Ellis Island of the South for the slave trade.
Sure.
Slave trade.
Yeah, and because it was part of the Civil War and the Revolutionary War, and there's a fort there I think it's called Moultrie. Moultrie, yeah. So it is. It's very historic, and it has a lot of lore associated with it, as we find out in the story. A lot of ghosts still live in the minds of people, the ghosts of the people that passed through there and lived in those homes. And I thought it was neat that her house even had a nickname. What was it called? The Gamble? The Island Gamble?
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking that a lot of the houses had nicknames or names.
Somebody in the family probably won the, game of cards.
Or maybe it was a gamble that it was where it
Oh.
was built and it never got washed away.
Gamble or gamble?
I
Gamble,
heard it as
Gamble.
Gamble, but I'm not sure. That's a good
Island
question.
Gamble.
I think because of where they're situated, you could have one house wash away and two down is just fine. So I mean, the hurricanes and the winds and the water and the patterns are just very part of life.
It is gamble.
Yeah.
Not Gramble, gamble.
I think you're right. It's kind of a, lack of a better word, crapshoot
Exactly.
in terms of the survival of homes on that beach, in that
Like
place.
what happened recently with Trump's house in the Indies? No, in the Caribbean somewhere. And their houses just washed away.
They washed away, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you can't get flood insurance.
That's right. On our second question, what is the Gullah culture, and how did it impact the psyche of Susan Hamilton Hayes and her siblings? And did Livy Singleton's legacy have an impact on Susan's daughter Beth?
Yes, all the stories
All the
that she
stories.
heard growing up. And then when they showed them that they would speak, the two sisters would speak to each other. In Gullah, I say Gullah.
Yeah, you see the two sisters in the beginning of the story speaking kind of in that inflection and using words that are from her childhood that she learned from their housekeeper Livy. Livy had a huge impact, I thought, and you find out that Susan's teaching her daughter how to speak the Gullah dialect as well, and I thought that was a wonderful thing for her to be teaching her daughter.
It's kind of hard to hear and understand the dialect, though, through a book. Unless you actually are right there in front of that person who's speaking it, you get a little bit of reflection of it, but not a whole lot. It's just certain words that they have a whole way of saying.
You have a good point. I was listening to the novel in a way I cheated because I was hearing them act it out,
That book must be on
Books on
CD.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, you may get more of that sound.
And that was kind of the fun aspect of listening to it because you get to hear the living language
would be
of
interesting.
the people, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah, and then they also talked about Geechee, which is another word I'd never heard, there was, and that had to do with the river, the Geechee, in either from on one side of the river or the other side of the river, and that would tell you, they used that word to refer to where people lived.
Is that a nickname for a, was it a nickname for a river?
It was
that exists?
It was called the, what was that called? It was the Geechee.
It was just a location. If
was
you
a
lived on the
location.
Geechee,
That's
you lived
right.
on a certain area of the river.
That's right. It was Ogeechee River. And,
Ogeechee.
and if you
Okay.
were freshwater, if you were on the mainland, you were considered freshwater Geechee.
Okay.
And if you were on the sea islands, you were considered saltwater Geechee. So they referred to each other
Makes
as
sense.
Geechees. Which I like that. I like the sound of that word.
I didn't realize that.
There was so much that I didn't know about the Creole that they spoke, which I guess is another word to describe their mixture of languages from Africa and English and French. That's right.
Definitely.
Yeah, and maybe other languages as well.
Did you do some research on Gullah?
I did a little
Did you?
bit. I tried to. I looked up the word and
Okay.
different words that they used, and it was kind of fun.
I've heard about Gullah a lot through the BG quilt movement.
Oh, what is
yeah.
that?
It's an isolated area in the south, an island somewhere. I'm sorry, I don't know, can't remember. But it's where they really didn't have a lot to do with the outside world. It was very Creole, very Gula. They spoke the language. And they made these very rough quilts. But they really, they just had no money. They were just lived in poverty. But the quilts, the way they positioned it and everything, they're just beautiful. They've been in all the major museums, all the New York museums. They were up in Flint. I saw them in Flint. So, but that's part of the Gula culture, and they actually spoke the language. And these women, the Creole, they really didn't have a lot to do with the outside world. So that's why it's such a wonderful cultural representation to this culture, Gula culture. But go on.
That's fascinating. Ronald, did you want to add something?
I was just saying there was a kids show called Gullah Gullah Island.
Really?
My oldest is 24, so when he was a kid, there was a show.
So it's a
Kids
reference
show.
to it, definitely.
And then also, I think Livy's position, she really raised the kids.
Yeah.
She
Her
did.
mother kind
A
of
lot-
laid
a
in
lot
the
of
room,
the-
it seemed
a lot
like,
of-
and
a lot of them
wasn't too
did that.
involved. She kind of was a lady of leisure somewhat.
Right, this is true. She was very involved. She was kind of a substitute mother for them. You're right. She was like their surrogate. She was the one they went to for all kinds of things that their mother wasn't.
She was just depressed.
Yeah, she was a depressed woman.
Just
That's
in her
right.
room.
And she was
Seemed to have a reason.
She was abused, emotionally abused, probably, who knows?
Physically.
By her
Physically,
husband.
by
Her husband seemed to have a rage problem,
Oh, big
I
time.
would say. And she took medication that would keep her calm and kept her in her bed, it seemed, for most of the novel. I guess 3/4 of the novel this woman spent in her bed.
And actually, she should have continued the story of her mother. I was
Yes.
hoping that there would be more of her mother and, her afterlife.
Well, there is actually, doesn't she?
Was
get
it another
remarried?
book?
Well, she does get. I don't know if we get to that in our questions, but I believe that she marries the.
Right, they implied, they didn't.
Implied that she
yeah,
married
right,
the rich
right.
doctor.
But we didn't hear any more about it.
Okay, and her lived happily ever after with
Yeah.
that giant ring on her finger,
Yeah,
which I kind of felt good about.
The mother used the only skills she had to,
yeah, that came out at the end,
yes,
yeah.
her looks.
Her
Clean
love
herself
that.
up and get a second husband.
Yeah,
With
of course
money.
She was,
And if you're going to get a second husband, get a rich one.
Yeah,
that's right. She had to turn around, and she suddenly became vivacious and started
yeah.
dressing well, and
But she did what she had to do to.
that's right.
But it seems like
Take care of her.
she was happy. She wasn't just, I think she was happy doing it.
Yeah, she seemed like it.
I got a
suddenly.
big kick out of it. He was Jewish, and she was not.
That's right.
I got a big kick out of that because I thought that was kind of a twist in the story.
It
well,
was.
we don't know how much is true and how much is fiction of the story itself.
Oh, sure.
I mean,
It's just a writer's way of putting
Right.
a little twist in there. You have, you have 200 pages of Catholicism, and at the very end,
No, you you raise a good point. I think she's trying to give you a kind of a inclusive look at American life and how vastly different we all are.
Well,
from each other.
yeah, this is a big country. I mean,
Yes.
everybody's got a different story.
That's right, exactly. And so there were a lot of different stories in this book, a lot of different backgrounds and melding of people, which I thought was kind of fascinating.
And I'm never shocked at what I read.
Oh, I know that first chapter was quite shocking when she finds her husband in bed with a 20-some-year-old young lady, right?
The questions down here, should she have taken him back? It's like, no.
Right.
That was over the top stupid on his part.
Yes. Yeah. But she was ready to take him back, wasn't she? Halfway through the novel, she was really considering it. She wanted it all to be okay, and then he got sick, right?
If she had taken it back, I would have not liked the book. I would have put it down and said, that's
Well,
not.
there would be a story. I mean, if she'd taken him back.
But she said
Probably.
he learned a lot.
She confronts him. She's like I was really proud of her.
Sure.
Yes.
She yelled at him and said, "You get your butt out of that bed
And out of here."
And out of yes." I was so proud of this woman who was a librarian with her boring
That's
job
right.
that she talked about, how bored she was with her life. You know.
The part that showed her to me being really strong is, although he was in the wrong, she didn't talk bad about him to the daughter.
That's
She didn't
right.
try and turn her
Very
daughter against her,
Yes.
the father.
Exactly.
I like
That
that
would
she.
have made her as bad as him.
That's right.
I like that she hired a real gutsy female attorney.
Thank you. That she was an oddball, quirky woman, but strong, right?
Yeah.
Very she was smoking, and what else did they do in that meeting that was so fascinating? Did they have an alcoholic beverage, or did they did something else that was a little bit shocking for me even.
Well,
Oh.
she was
Yeah,
interested in
they
their
had
stories.
a joint. Somebody
They
did,
smoked something, right?
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. It was like,
Should we
I
mention
was
it?
They bonded.
They bonded over something. Yeah.
But she was a well-known attorney too. I mean, her name was out there. Because even her husband, knew who she had hired as an attorney.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And she coached Susan on how to behave with him, which I thought was really impressive. That was really I loved her actually. I was like rooting for her all the way. Let's see what her question was. Susan's relationship with Livy was a powerful one, as is her relationship with her own mother. Would you say that her mother's weakness was as valuable to her as Livy's strength? And would you describe Livy and Susan's mother, MC, as frustrated by their positions in life? It's a good question, how you compare those two women. What did you all think of that?
I didn't feel like she had a strong relationship with her mother.
No, she didn't. No, her mother was kind of absent, as we said.
Oh, absolutely.
I think she learned to not be like her mother.
That's
You know,
right.
it bothered me so much in it that when the mother had the twins, that the other children just took over, even the little boys. Were about when showing up once, and that the little brother was taking care of the baby, and the baby was crying, and she said, "What did you think? We were going to let you starve?" So she just gave up, let the big kids take care of it, which was terrible. Because then when
Right.
she needed something on her own, she got out of bed and got her makeup on and attracted another guy. It's like, why didn't you use that energy to take care of your children?
Good point. That's right. She was.
Well, she was drugged. She had the two doctors. Well, one was shots and one was pills.
That's right.
Remember? So she was just numb in her room.
And of the time, and then the second part about the children being abused, the man was always right back then, and so the doctors were like, "Well, just dope her up and it'll be okay.
That's right.
She won't fuss. If she's doped up, she'll stay in bed." And then if he couldn't handle it and was mean to the kids, it was like, well, he's misunderstood. But then the woman taking care of them was like, "No, you're not going to hurt those children on my watch."
That's right. Yeah. And she stood up to him.
Yes.
MC, the mother, could have been very much like her own mother, Sophie, because Sophie had issues also.
That's right.
And I
she
think-
did. You raise a good point.
There again, Southern women, I think, are sort of pampered.
I never thought
I mean,
about that.
you always
That's kind of a
heard-
stereotype.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It is. Right.
Take to your bed and somebody else will fix
Sure,
it.
right,
Yes.
right. And there were always, in certain families, there were always servants or people around
Right.
to take care of the
They all
children.
had mammies.
Right, right. Not all of them, but a lot, of that, what do you want to say,
No.
Class.
class. Yeah,
Like Scarlett
yeah.
O'Hara.
Right,
She's
right.
she's like your perfect
Yeah.
example of
Yeah.
the, really spoiled brat
Right.
who gets people to do stuff for her regardless of whether they should or not.
And Livy was not the first housekeeper to come in, but she's probably the only one that stayed as long as she did.
That's right.
The others, left after a short time.
But I think they couldn't handle the father.
Exactly, yeah,
The racism
Yeah.
from the grandparents.
right.
Oh, yeah, the building of the bathroom. That was a good
Oh,
one.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's
But
true.
I had heard of that
They built
happening
the
too.
bathroom
yeah.
onto the house
Right.
just so that the new black
Housekeeper.
housekeeper
yes.
could have a place to go to the bathroom instead of the outhouse. The kids burnt down the outhouse.
That's right. And that was considered progress.
Rebelling.
at that-
A real
in that
rebelling,
community.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Well,
think-
after seeing so many people, so many housekeepers leave, they wanted to keep one. I mean, I guess.
absolutely.
But those kids had a lot of guts, a lot of gumption to do what they did.
They did.
In
Well,
that
they
story.
had the approval of their father, no? Was it their father? They
Yeah.
had the approval of their father.
But in some ways, yeah, I guess so.
To
You
burn
mean-
down the outhouse, they did.
Oh yeah, that's right,
That's
right,
right.
right.
They were
Yeah,
in cahoots
yeah.
together. So
Yeah,
they
he-
basically
That's
got
right.
permission.
right.
And that's a big
He was
clue in his personality.
Right, and he was involved in the building of that high school to desegregate.
That's right.
So
exactly.
yeah, he had a different view altogether.
So he wasn't all bad.
I don't know if
Yeah,
was
right.
it to desegregate or it was just that he was building a high school that had a gym. It was for the black community
Right.
that had a gym, that had heat, all
That's
that.
right,
And he
that's
was,
right.
everybody was upset that he was spending all this money for the black population.
But it
Oh,
wasn't
no,
his money, so
But
No.
that's why they were upset. That's why
Well-
the Ku Klux Klan got
yeah,
him
they
in the
were
end
there
anyway.
too. Yeah,
That's right. And didn't he also hire black workers for
Yeah.
his,
Yes.
his crew?
Yeah,
And it
he
got
was
him in
very
a lot of
progressive.
trouble.
He was
Yeah.
very progressive in his.
Yeah.
But
Sort of.
Kind of.
He's also this abusive alcoholic psycho.
yeah, he had his own. Yeah, he had
You
other
see two
issues.
sides of this man. Just
Yeah.
going through this
Oh.
novel, there's the good side that wants to help his community and help, disenfranchised blacks, and he's this horrible, abusive dad whose children are terrified of him. So it's hard to like.
Plus, he's a philanderer. He
Oh,
cheated
that's
with-
right. He is a
he's a cheat.
philanderer.
Oh, yeah.
On top of it all.
The porch incident. Oh my goodness.
And the lady who watches it across the
Yeah.
street.
Yeah, but she's a fallen woman, so.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
I love that.
she'd probably
part,
seen
that-
it all.
That character across the street, yeah, who had seen it all, like you said. She was a fascinating person.
I had a comment just to say about her giving the twins on over to her kids. I think in large families, oftentimes the older siblings help with the kids a lot.
True.
Mom just can't take care of 12. I mean, they weren't 12 kids, but as an example, 12 kids. She's too busy with the little ones, so the other ones have to take over and dress
Well,
them.
in
and do
large
their hair,
families
whatever.
now, you don't have just a mother going off to bed, but you have a mother going off to work.
Yeah,
this culture.
exactly. Oh, it was
So
different.
you have,
It
you
was
have
different
large.
back then.
It happens many times in different cultures for different reasons. And I think our culture is now the mother working because it's necessary. How can you have that many children and not bring in some
Yep.
money?
And then the grandma and grandpa
Oh,
played
yeah.
a huge role.
Role.
The grandmother and grandfather, and they were kind of on the end of their life here in the story, but today they play an even bigger role in helping with daycare.
And you wonder why the mother took off to her bed, because she was sandwiched between all these generations, and all the issues.
Yeah, maybe the fear of working. She said she would never work, I believe. That was the sense I got, that she wasn't going to go to work. That she could bring in a tenant, bring in a renter into her house and make money that way. But to actually go out and earn a living was something that she just couldn't, because of the way she grew up.
Yeah, she sounds very spoiled, and
And women shouldn't work in some cultures
but
at
that
all.
and
you
that
know.
was, but I think that was more typical of that era.
Of that time,
Yeah.
yeah. Even my own mom was
right.
like terrified of going to work.
Sure.
I know that until we became teenagers, and then she kind of like, I guess I can do it. But
My mother did the same thing. Right. She went to work when my brothers were teenagers. Yeah.
How about maybe they wanted to get out of the house by the time the kids are teenagers? I mean, I have 2 teenagers and get a lot of problems from them. Not that much. It's not like when they're little kids and
Yeah.
they just love you up. You know, teenagers love to tell you everything that's wrong with you and everything you've done wrong, or doing wrong.
But you almost have to stay home when they're teenagers more, because you really have to police.
watch-
You have to
watch
police them.
right?
In
Yeah,
this
it's
culture.
exhausting, I think.
In this culture.
Maybe women want to get out and do anything else.
Well, while we're on that topic, would you say that it is better to have come of age in the 60s or the 90s?
Oh.
Which is, the 90s is when this novel takes place. I mean, it was written in...
Well,
it
of
came-
course, I think coming of age in the 60s is best.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
The author is only 3 years younger than me.
Right.
So many of her cultural references were right on to me. I connected with the story and the feelings, and not I didn't have some bad things happen like she did, but that the cultural references. In the 90s, it's like, didn't we just have those? Yes. No, we didn't. It's like, this is 17 already.
So is this book, you said, is written during the 60s?
Well, she flashbacks to her childhood
In the 60s,
60s, in
yeah.
1963, when that
Oh, and
when all
then-
that activity was
okay.
going on in the past. But then her daughter is growing. I get the sense that her daughter's growing up in the 90s.
Right, right.
And she's facing some of those, like when she leaves her daughter alone for the evening
Yeah,
until 11
yeah.
to go out on a date with one of these men that she's met. You know, she comes back, she gets a call during the date saying that, you know, all craziness has broken out in her house. There's kids that are drunk there, and that she's got to rush back, and she's embarrassed. And to me, that I don't recall those sorts of things happening in my family at that time when we were teenagers, but things seem like of this nature seem more prevalent in this culture. But I could be just imagining
I think-
it through rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, I think things did happen, but it wasn't always out there like it is now. It was they were rumors and in the windows about party going on or something like that. It's but
We
there's
weren't
just
all
more.
plugged in. Well, I guess were we all plugged in the 90s?
Well, in the 60s they had it. Well, it was the beginning of LSD. I mean, there was a lot going on in the 60s. It was very...
That was the beginning.
And when you consider that you came from a very straight culture before the 60s, the 50s, and the mother stayed home, you know, the father was the breadwinner, you know, church was important. But, you know, there was still drugs and alcohol and, you know, the crazies of the 60s. I mean, that was... I'm not saying it's any easier to raise children now.
There's a clearer path to life back then than there is now. For
There's a
kids.
what?
A clearer path. You know, kids today, they're like, what am I going to do with myself? You know, there's no jobs. I'm going to graduate from college. There's no job. You know, they don't know it's not clear. Like in the 60s or even the 90s, it was more you put one foot in front of the other, you go to college, you get your advanced degree, you get the great job. Now they can do that and they don't get the great job, and they got to figure out a whole new way to survive. You know, online or whatever they're doing. I think it's not as clear.
The world is
as it
definitely
used to be.
different. It's a different place than it was back in the 60s, you know, in terms of what we think of ourselves as men and women, you know, men feel, I think men, could I speak for men, they feel threatened by women's liberation and women going to work and women having different identities in our culture. And I think that's hard for them. At least that's how I see it.
I mean, they don't have a clear, you know, ultimate purpose. Because you don't need that. You know, you can not get married or
That's right.
Not have
Women
a
can
man.
choose not
You
to
don't
have
want one.
children more readily than they could in the past. So I thought I'd move on to question 11. The South is known for its ghost stories. And I thought this was a really great part of the novel, and tales of the inexplicable. As we get closer to Halloween, it's kind of a theme. Do you think that the mirror described in Sullivan's Island was believable? And if not, who among you has had something happen that defies scientific explanation? And we all remember that the family inherited a mirror and it sat in Susan's family's home when she was a child. And Livy believed that it was haunted, and she saw things that told her about the future, I believe, if I recall.
Was it like a big bar mirror?
It was a big bar mirror, that's right. They had inherited it from a huge saloon or a hotel or something like that.
Yeah, it was a long mirror, but they used it this way.
That's right. They used it vertically, but it was originally horizontal and
Horizontal.
over a big bar. I'm assuming. I envisioned that. So it probably had all kinds of gorgeous wood and artwork on it. It felt old and rich and beautiful. So I really like this part of the novel a lot.
It was a wonderful twist.
Yes.
A twist, and and the way she wrote it, it was believable. Because she wrote it I can't remember the exact time when the dead person came through to speak to her. Who was it?
That's right. Was it one of the grandparents or no? It was one of her parents. I don't recall, but I think that it added a whole level of.
Gave her a sense of comfort.
That's right. Yes.
And I think, it's like the Ouija board. When you used to do it as a kid. And it would answer your questions. And, I always wondered, is this your subconscious answering these questions? And it is. I don't think the Ouija board is anything miracle. And I think the mirror is the same way. It's giving a sense of comfort. It's your subconscious coming forth, telling you everything's going to be okay, or something. I don't know.
No, I agree with you. It's us looking for answers of the unexplainable.
Exactly.
If you're talking about the mirror, if nothing like that has ever happened to me, but if somebody said to me it happened, I would believe them.
Me
I'd
too.
be, oh, okay. And say, I wish it had happened to me.
Yes. Yeah, I know my father-in-law, who grew up in Poland, just before his aunt passed away, he had a vision of her that morning. He didn't know she was going to die, but he saw when he went to get dressed. He opened the closet door and he saw her in the closet, a vision of her. And it was he will relate. He's no longer with us, but he relates that story as if he saw her ghost, and she wasn't dead yet. So it was something telling him that she was going to die, and so he really believes strongly that he was touched by her spirit, and so
And
it's a
it's
lovely story.
Premonitions.
Story like that gives me goosebumps as opposed to saying, "Oh, come on."
Right.
He didn't.
I think-
I would believe it. I have
think it's
Irish
possible.
heritage, and the fairies and all the good things they're coming. They're gonna get it.
Haven't we all had a deja vu moment?
Sure.
Where we felt that we've lived through this or we've seen this moment? Because I've had that many times, even as a small child. I always say I flunk psychic because I can't put the connection to it. But I've had many, many, many visualizations, like you said, that I can't put the connection to. But I think there are a lot of people out there that are very talented. I think that there are people who do actually have that talent to tell you what's going on,
Yes, I think they're.
to see things.
What about when somebody has died and they visit you in a dream? I mean, I always feel like, my father or my sister, they come in the dream, they visit me. And I always, wonder why haven't I seen my father recently? Why haven't I gotten to go see him? Or the telephone, they call you, and in the dream, of course. And there they are on the phone, and why haven't you called them? Why haven't you visited them? Well, they're dead. But that kind of sense, I always feel like they visited me. Whether they have or not, I don't know. But I always feel like that. Like, oh, Dad visited me last night, or my sister, or somebody reached out and said, hey.
And I think the symbolism of the mirror too kind of symbolizes their history, their feeling about the place, and their spiritual connection to that place to me, and how strong that pull is from the past that keeps them grounded as human beings in their world. And from the onslaught of nature too. Nature is so inexplicable, and the things that happen to us in our lives are so difficult that knowing that you have something to believe in. I think that's what that felt really great about. I think that was that love that Livy gave to that sense of the powerfulness of belief. I think it was cool. I was just like taken aback by this book the whole way through. It was such a gift, It was really fun.
Just belonging. They belong.
That's right. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But I read enough books about the South and about stories about people like Livy. I think that was part of their culture. A little bit of supernatural. Voodooism,
Oh, that's
remember?
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Their belief system.
Right.
Yes.
I think I think a lot of it is true.
Putting a hex on somebody.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, it's
And
absolutely.
She included it as a little bit of thrill, or it was true.
No, you have a good point. There's a novel I just finished reading called The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, and it's about a runaway slave, and it starts out talking about the Low Country in that novel, and they talk about goofering things, and they talked about putting hexes on things,
Sure.
and how that was part of their life.
We do that during bowling.
Do you really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, your competition. You don't want them to get a strike.
No strike, no strike.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
I think you're right, Dorothy. It is part of the culture there. So it was interesting. It was.
Growing up in New York, my parents had 6 kids, so they had help sometimes. And the black women were Jamaican,
Oh, okay.
which kind of reminds me of this, and I don't know if it is really similar or not. But my aunt had a woman that worked for her forever, and my aunt and the lady didn't get along that well. They were always, my aunt always had some problem with the way she was doing something, but she's particular. And we would walk in, and what really annoyed my aunt, as teenagers, we'd head straight for the kitchen to see Louise, not to go see our aunt. We had to go say hi
They're
to
interesting.
Louise first, because Louise was great.
Yeah.
She was so sweet and wonderful, a tiny little woman. And one time she said, "Your hair grew tall," which meant my hair grew long. But we were really attached to her. She was so sweet.
Yeah, which reminds me of The Help. By
yeah.
Catherine
That's a great book. I
Stockett.
love that book.
It was a really
Definitely.
good, yeah,
Oh,
really
yeah.
good focus
Fabulous, yeah.
on people who work as housekeepers and take care of children, raise other people's kids, and how Livy's such a great example of how she loved these children, and she'd already raised her own children, which I thought was fascinating.
We had one woman named Yvonne, and she came from Jamaica, which was impoverished, and she left her 4 children to raise us.
Oh my,
She was away for her own children their whole childhood.
wow, it's so sad.
And I think
when you think
a
about
lot of
To
people
take
like
care of other
Livy.
people's kids because
Yeah.
there was no other work. And her
And-
husband cheated on her, I heard. Really,
Well,
it. Oh my,
like
she was
you
away.
like you mentioned, the Help. Same thing happened there.
yes.
They worked as maids and housekeepers, and they were there 8 hours a day and sometimes more at somebody else's house.
Oh, yeah,
That's
they
right.
lived
Yeah.
in. They lived in.
Right.
That's exactly right.
So who raised their kids?
That's
Maybe
They were left
maybe
on their own.
mother.
the grandmas, grandpas.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important to have grandmothers. It made me realize that in the story that grandmothers were so vital to our culture.
I bet you her story isn't the only story out there of black women that raised somebody else's kids.
I'm sure you're right.
Sure.
It's pretty common.
Well, in our culture now, like if you go on a cruise ship, so many of the women that work and do the maid service that you talk to every day in the halls and stuff, they have left their children for like a 6 or months at a time. And they're from the Philippines and from Croatia. I remember talking to one, and she was working so that she could have enough money to run a small chicken farm.
Oh my gosh.
That was her goal
Her
in
goal
life.
in life, yeah.
So I had to give her a big tip.
Oh my goodness.
For her chicken farm.
Yeah.
But, you don't realize how much we have until you do talk to these people.
How believable did you feel like the end of the story was? Did you feel like it was kind of a cliffhanger? She has a relationship with Simon. It starts to
Right.
open up again.
I just assume there's a sequel.
Yes, yes, there is.
Yeah.
Would anybody want to read the sequel? Do you
I
feel like
picked
you
it up.
wanted to move
I've
forward
already
and read
picked
the
it up.
next book in the
Oh.
series?
What's the name of it?
Return to Sullivan's Island.
Okay.
I picked up our copy.
I might have read it. That's why this was so familiar when I read the. I thought, okay, I haven't read this book, but I know about this.
I thought I had read this before too, but when I got into it, I think I read, there's a lot of books out here with that premise of that story, and that's probably what I read, because when I got into this book, I realized I don't remember reading that story before.
Okay.
So there's a lot of other books very similar. Yeah.
Oh, you're absolutely right. That's right. Yeah, I think the civil rights era was really important for our generation.
Oh,
You know, it
absolutely.
impacted, I think, everybody here and still does.
Yeah, and there's
so-
a lot of authors that write about that part of the country.
Yeah, yeah. If you read The Mermaid Chair, I think it's The Mermaid Chair. No, the one about the bees by,
Oh,
you know.
Secret Life of
Secret
Bees.
Life
Yeah.
of Bees
That
is
was
about
good.
the same, yes. That's a wonderful book about a similar topic, you know. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of books like that. Did anyone else have any other comments they wanted to make about Sullivan's Island before we go ahead and talk about our selection for next month? No? Okay, we'll move on. Our selection for next month is Wild by Cheryl Strayed. And I'll start passing them around. This book came onto the horizon. We talked about possibly reading a nonfiction. It's a memoir of a young woman.
Pass 'em down.
Oh, that's that story about the woman that goes hiking.
Hikes
That's right.
Okay.
She hikes for 1,100
Pacific-
miles.
Crest
Oh,
Trail.
wow.
That's correct. Yeah, and I believe Reese Witherspoon made a movie.
Yeah,
It was
Yes.
in the movie version of
I
this
watched
story.
the movie.
Yeah, and so I really wanted to have us read
Different.
The Glass Castle for next month, but everyone's reading The Glass Castle because of the movie. And it's one of my all-time favorite books, The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. It's an amazing book about an amazing heroine who makes it out of this crazy family that she was born into. And it's a fascinating book about American life. But we could not get our hands on copies. But we could get our hands on copies of this. And so I hope you all enjoy this book. I have started reading it. I love it. The first part of it involves her mother dying, and she was raised by a single mother. She's lost both parents, so she's kind of adrift. She was married at a very young age because she thought that was the way to go. But she even gets cut off from her husband. She divorces him, and she decides she wants to do something else with her life. And she decides to take that hike, 1,100 miles, with ever having hiked before in her life. So she plops herself down in the Mojave Desert in a little motel and gets out on the trail.
It's a true life story.
It's
Yeah.
a true life story.
Right.
Yeah, so I thought we'd all enjoy, this kind of true life adventure, which I think is fascinating, and
Yeah,
I hope you all enjoy it. I was very captivated by it. I think it's a pretty quick read. It makes you think about adventures and how people find themselves through extraordinary feats. And
It's very brave.
yes, she's very brave. Yeah, and she goes out there alone on the trail, which I don't think I could possibly do by myself.
No.
I think I'd have to have a companion, and she talks about
But I've read the book. My husband actually
Oh,
bought it
yeah.
for me for
Okay.
Christmas, which a couple years ago. I've already given it away, but I'd love to read it again. I saw the movie, and I'm so into the Pacific Crest Trail. But I enjoyed reading.
Did you get a
the
copy?
different- I'll get one. The terrain that she quits at the Bridge of the Gods,
Oh,
and the
that's
Bridge of the
right.
Gods is at the Columbia River Gorge, and I grew up on both sides of the Columbia River Gorge. I grew up on the east side, and then I lived in Portland, Oregon.
Oh my goodness!
And the Bridge of the Gods is the most beautiful bridge. It's built in diamonds, and it was built down in the 30s. But as a child, to me, that was the most beautiful bridge. And I think I probably wanted to become a civil engineer by studying this bridge as a child.
How fascinating.
But the countryside that she sees going through Oregon and everything. But I would have liked to have had her go from the Columbia River on up to Canada, because to me that terrain would be even more exquisite.
Is that the bridge that goes over to Washington?
Yes, it's right at. It's
My husband and I rode our bikes over that bridge.
okay.
And it's
my
very
gosh.
high. It's what, 100, 150. It's very high above the water.
Right.
And that day was really windy.
So
So we were riding our bikes, and then we got, I don't know, halfway-ish, maybe. I got off our bikes and walked.
Yeah.
Because we were afraid. The wind, it's an open ground.
The
It's
wind
very
comes through the
gracious.
gorge, and just south of the Bridge of the Gods is where they have the windsurfing 24/7,
Really?
365 days a year.
Oh my goodness.
You can go and they have tournaments because the wind comes around Mount Hood, where they have all the orchards, and then
Travel
it comes
Channel.
down the gorge, and it
Travel
right
Channel.
there. There's just it's
So
unbelievable.
we got scared. You know, we were riding our bikes
Sure.
and we're fine, and then we're like, this is too windy. We're gonna get swept over into that water.
Wow. So there's a lot of physical
Where were you?
challenges
Where
there.
were you going when you were riding your bikes? Just
We went to what's the lake there? Crater Lake. We rode our bikes around the Crater
Oh,
Lake.
wow.
I was
Oh, my
actually pregnant
goodness.
at this time.
Oh my gosh.
A little bit, you know,
So
just a little bit.
adventurous.
But then we were just hanging around, and we just. Were
you didn't ride your bike from Crater Lake up to the.
Oh no, we had a car. We
Okay.
just went around Crater Lake. And we had our bikes with our car. And that was the summer that there was a really big drought, and we got stuck. They were doing road work. We were stuck somewhere on the road. We actually took bottles of water and poured them over our heads, and they dissipated, pretty much within
yeah.
minutes. It was that hot.
I grew up in the
And,
desert. I
It
understand.
was so hot. We were thinking of moving to Oregon at that time, and then we were just like, no, that summer. So we stayed.
That killed you off.
It wasn't
Well-
quite what we were actually somewhere on some road by a campground, and we're like living in the country, and we're like, if we live here, this will be it. We'll be sitting on this road, and a car will go by in 45 minutes, and that'll be it.
There's a lot of wilderness out there. That's
Well,
wonderful.
I hope you enjoy
Beautiful.
this book. This sounds really exciting, and about this wilderness adventure. And our next meeting will be November 3rd, when we'll meet again for First Friday Book Club. So I want to thank you all for being here today. Thanks for all of our participants today. Thanks for coming.
It's fun.
Thank you.
Hopefully I'll be here. I think my daughter's getting some tea from me.
Hey Lakeville, you're watching OCTV.
Canine Stray Rescue is Oxford's own local dog rescue. Each year they take in hundreds of dogs and bring them into suitable homes. A certified nonprofit organization, Canine Dog Rescue strives to give pound dogs a new leash on life. To donate, adopt, or even volunteer, call them at 248-628-0435 or go to their website dogsaver.org and click on the Canine Stray Rescue League link. Hey Leonard, you're watching OCTV.